Dr. Twyla Dell is an environmental author. She also is a gasoline and energy historian. Dr. Dell joins me now. Dr. Dell, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
There are wildfires burning right now in the West, and we also have a very active hurricane season. We know that this is climate change and it is very serious. What can we expect in the near future if climate change is not resolved?
It is going to be worse. And what you see in the way of fires is means that the area is drying out. And with
Mhm.
the hurricanes, the area is getting wet. And so you're going to have wetter and wetter and drier and drier. And those people who live along the coast are going to have to move up and out of that as these polar ice caps melt, which is the real cause. And the interior of the country is going to get dry because that water for hurricanes has to come somewhere. And so it comes
Mhm.
out of the soil of the Midwest and starts working on the coasts. And because we're in a closed system, the earth is a closed system and we only have so much water. And the more you see one place, the less you see somewhere else. So that's it in a simplified form. The 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 forecast is dire, quite honestly. We can't
Mhm.
get ourselves out of this unless we do something heroic. And in my view, the best thing we can do is to everybody stop burning gasoline because everybody, most drivers do burn gasoline, and
Mhm.
every gallon of gasoline that we burn leaves behind 20 pounds of carbon dioxide. So
Mm.
if you fill up your tank with 15 gallons, for instance, and that's 15 gallons times 20 pounds, so that's 300 pounds of carbon dioxide you're going to leave behind from one tank. Are
Mm.
you doing anything else that pollutes that much? No. But this is a very carefully kept secret on the part of the automobile and the oil companies because they want to perpetuate themselves as long as possible. Even as the electric car market is coming on big time,
Mhm.
led by Elon Musk and the Tesla, and God love him, he's going to be the saint of the century. But it takes everybody's part. And you may be recycling, you may be doing a lot of other environmental things, but if you are burning gasoline and it comes out to about a pound of carbon dioxide per mile, you are polluting in the biggest way possible.
Mm.
And you can stop it. And if I had my druthers, we would all stop it all the way around the planet to the point that is humanly possible. And then that would begin to stop the melting. As long as the poles melt, and I'm not sure that we can stop them from melting. And they say that, we have 2 degrees Celsius. They're
Mhm.
melting and we're helping them. And the only way to stop that is to stop what we're doing.
Mm.
It is the biggest, by far, challenge that's going on the planet. It makes the Trump administration and everything else look small. Even the coronavirus is small compared to this. But those two things have blotted out what is happening, unless you have fires going on to the extent that they make good, news coverage.
Mhm.
And, and so we're not addressing it. And that is to our enormous detriment. And we cannot make up for that. We cannot make up for it.
Mm. Climate change has become sort of a partisan issue. I opened up with the show with a 2008 ad with Nancy Pelosi and Newt Gingrich, Democrat and Republican, talking about the threat of climate change. But over the years, the Republican Party has denied it, and the Trump administration has sort of perpetuated that. Do you believe that this is slowing down? Do you believe that this is slowing down our chance to address the climate crisis? And do you think that time is running out?
Yes, and yes. For some reason, they've decided to weaponize the whole thing. And so it belongs to the party that they love to loathe. And so they can't support something that is in everybody's best interest. It's just that simple. But
Mhm.
people are going to have to break away and just start thinking about their property. I'm sitting here in Kansas City and my yard is drying out. And I just noticed it in a way that never before in
Mm.
the fall have we had this just drying out, and I'm going to have to start watering my foundation. Meanwhile, these people on the coast, they're going to get their feet wet and they're going to start coming inland. I've seen two different people on the morning news saying, well, I've had enough of this, I'm leaving. And then the people from California who tired of having their state burning and they're moving inland. So we're going to have a big change in population demographics. And the idea that we can somehow vote in a way that ignores this is just wrong. President Trump and the automakers decided to change. Of course, they've changed at least 100 environmental laws, weakened them. And they decided recently that they were going to extend the oil and gasoline mileage in a car rather than reduce it. It's not as if they can't. They can do whatever they want, but no, they don't want to do it as soon as the Obama administration had set the change, because they hate Obama and they can't, let's face it, and they can't bear to give him a single law that would do something that they disagree with. So it's a very unfortunate. It's like 8-year-olds in the schoolyard. I'm going to let you die before I do anything for our whole total benefit.
Yeah.
It's very short-sighted.
How can we as humans contribute to resolving the climate crisis?
I just told you, stop burning gasoline. Does this tank of gasoline make me look fat? Yes. Start walking. If you have children, if you have grandchildren, you need to do this, and you need to do it as soon as possible. There is in the works, and I've been reading about it just recently, a real shift, a dramatic shift forecast of going to electric cars. There are all kinds of new independent car makers coming out. Even some of the old car makers are going to electric. That's great. And on the other side of that, you're going to see gasoline cars abandoned on the countryside because they've become the wrong thing to drive. You understand? So this is going to be interesting, but we have to do it fast. Once if poles melt, that is North Pole and South Pole, we are out of refrigeration and our days are going to get very hot. I mean, we're going to be into the 120s, maybe more. And I just can't give up my gas-powered car to prevent in 5 or 10 years a day in which it's 120, or a week, or a month, or a season. Come on, we have to begin to think long-term. We have to think beyond politics.
What American cities are at risk the most because of climate change?
Well, there are various lists out, and New Orleans is at the top of the list, needless to say. They already have their feet wet.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I was watching the HGTV show, Selling the Big Easy. This was just yesterday. And they were selling these $2.5 million mansions on the Gulf Coast, 100 feet from the ocean. And people were paying $2.5 million for this house. And I'm thinking, come on, wake up. Lousy. Anyway, what was the question? I got carried away.
Sorry.
The city. Okay, so
Yes.
the city, New York is the number 4. Minneapolis is number 2. Las Vegas, Kansas City, and New York City. Those are the top 5. And then they go all the way down the list. And those are available on my website, how we can stop climate change now.com. And every city needs to be looking at itself in terms of changing the use of gasoline, the working at home instead of, this is one great gift the coronavirus has given us, shown us that we can work at home in many cases rather than driving into work. And that's going to become more and more common. And we're never going to go back to driving to work. We never are. Just face it, right?
Yeah.
And so think refrigeration. If you have a house in which your refrigerator has gone out, you are one unhappy camper, right?
Yeah.
Right. So think ice. and stop driving your gasoline powered car.
We have seen activists like Greta Thunberg and other young leaders around the world speak about the existential threat of climate change, but some of our elected officials are reluctant to act on this issue. Is there an effective way that we can demand action and hold our elected officials accountable?
Well, there's always the ballot box.
Uh
However,
huh.
it's a slow process. Quit driving. Quit driving. Come on, you now have an alternative form of communication that's called Zoom.
Hmm.
And, begin to stand up for what you know is going to be your future. We can and must in 5 years stop this melting. If there's anything left in 5 years, this is really quite urgent. And your city council, most of the city councils are already doing very well in terms of environmental protection, but nobody has asked the fleet of citizens in those cities to cut back on gasoline use. It just has not yet penetrated. And we have not had Zoom, for instance, available to us as an alternative. But now there's no excuse. 20 pounds of carbon dioxide per gallon, 1 pound of carbon dioxide per mile.
Mm.
Just start thinking in terms of pounds per mile. And it's so easy. You go out to Costco, which is 5 or 6 miles from me. Well,
Hmm.
that's 12 pounds of CO2 that I've burned to go get something special at Costco. That has to stop.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not the 1 mile trip to the local grocery, it's the 5 and 6 and 10 mile trips that we make, that we have to begin to quantify
Hmm.
and say, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm giving that up.
Once again, my guest is Dr. Twyla Dell. Dr. Dell, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your advice.
You're welcome. Show them my book.
Thank you so much. Dr. Dell has written a book called Fueling Change. She is also an environmental author and a gasoline and energy historian. All of her information will be in the description of this episode. We'll be right back.
Thank you.